Hi, I'm CASTILLO and this is my presentation about Chapter 5, the Internationalization of Retailing. So the purpose of this chapter is to discuss the key themes relating to the internationalization of retailing. The chapter describes the various facets of international retailing, and the scope of retailer internationalization considers the basic strategic option, the method and ways of market selection and market entry or market operations, and reviews the international retail marketing opportunities. First is the international activities. International sourcing. It is the practice of sourcing from the global market for goods and services across geopolitical boundaries. International sourcing often aims to exploit global efficiencies in the delivery of a product and services. These efficiencies include low-cost skilled labor, low-cost raw material, and economic factors like tax break and low trade tariffs. The reason for international sourcing are learning how to do business in a potential market, tapping into skills or resources unavailable domestically, developing alternate supplier or vendor sources to stimulate competition, and increasing total supply capacity. And next is cross-border retailing. Cross-border retailing has accelerated dramatically through the last 2 decades, though of course it began much earlier, Howard in 2004. The internationalization of store operations. Cross-border retailing is the form of internationalization on which this chapter concentrates. However, it remains a limited activity for most retailers. So, cross-border retailing, it is the online trade between a business and a consumer, between two businesses, often brands or wholesalers, or between two private persons, via marketplace platforms such as eBay or Amazon. Next is basic strategic options. So, standardization versus adaptation. The major dilemma for international retailing and for international marketing is that of standardization and versus adaptation. Some products are global products, meaning they can be sold in foreign markets with virtually no adaptation. This is what meant by standardization. Most products, however, need some changes in the product or promotion strategy to fit new markets. This is what meant by adaptation. In retailing, the product is the retail business. As pointed out, adaptation involves modifying a product so as to meet the local requirements and customs. With standardization, however, the products are neither modified nor are the marketing approach changed. A company assumes one-size-fits-all strategy and tries to infiltrate foreign markets. So this is the list of international sales of the largest food retail companies in 2005. As you can see, the first in the ranking is Walmart. We all know that Walmart is a grocery store and they retail so many products. So that's why they reached the top 1 in the international sales of largest food retail companies in 2005. So there are 4 basic options with regard to standardization and adaptation. It is the domestic market orientation, global orientation, multinational orientation, and local orientation. So first is the domestic market orientation. The retail concept from the home market is transferred to the other countries. This approach leads to a unified program of an ethnocentric kind. So it is an approach to business that prioritizes identifying the needs and desires of consumers and creating products and services that satisfy them domestically. Next is global orientation. This kind of standardization is characterized by focusing on exploiting similar markets across the world and benefiting from economies of scale. Global orientation in international retailing, therefore, does not adapt to differences in local markets. In contrast to the domestic market approach, the company seeks homogeneous markets worldwide, which are the basis for developing a retail strategy or concept. Next is multinational orientation. So, this approach can be described as diametrically opposed to the multinational orientation, which is it is characterized by substantial adaptations or diverse formats or concept operating in heterogeneous markets. So it is which a company uses the same products and marketing strategy in each country as it does in its home country. And last is global orientation. The global orientation means think global and act local. Seeks the advantages of both moderate adaptations to heterogeneous markets. The retail company brings together economies of scale and a concentration on country markets. It is the simultaneous occurrence of both universalizing and particularizing tendencies in contemporary social, political, and economic system. The notion of globalization represents a challenge to simplistic conceptions of globalization processes as linear expansions of territorial scales. Global orientation indicates that the growing importance of continental and global level is occurring together with increasing silence of local and regional levels. These four basic kinds of international retailing largely determine the decisions as to market selection and timing, the mode of entry or mode of operations in countries, and of course the marketing concept itself. Next is market selection and timing, assessment of potential markets. The issues of marketing selection and the assessment of potential markets and timing are closely connected. And Howard said in 2004 that timing is crucial, taking opportunities as they rise, particularly as markets open to foreign investment, and as consumer spending reaches absolute levels and levels of growth that are sufficient to support a new entrant. These questions of international market appraisal and timing are also closely connected to the basic options of domestic market orientation, global orientation, multinational orientation, and local orientation. And then, international retailing and market evaluation. Retail companies following a global approach, for example, consider to what extent there are shared customers' aspirations and similar infrastructure in different nations. In order to implement a relatively standardized strategy that conforms to these needs, the multinational approach concentrates largely on country markets, developing a specific strategy for each market. For this strategy, the market size or the spending power and competitive environment are primary consideration in market evaluation. So this is an example of an international market appraisal checklist. So you might look on the spending power, barriers and risks, cost and communications, and competition. In part of spending power, it has total GDP or the gross domestic power of a country, disposable incomes, population size, residential structure, and adjacent markets. And in barriers, the entry barriers, political risk, civil risk, economic risk, and other risks. And in cost and communication, the factor cost, logistics and cost, communications and cost, marketing communications. And last, in competition, existing retailers, cooperation, saturation levels, gap analysis, and in competitive potential. The purpose of this is to determine the value before finalizing a deal.
Expansion patterns. Three approaches to the strategic sequencing of foreign market entry are discussed in the literature. Sentes, Swoboda, Scramim, Glenn 2006, see Figure 5.2, IL-SIP 1979, propose a hierarchical approach that produces a slow sequence of entries to different markets depending on the receptivity. This approach has been dubbed the waterfall model to depict the situation where innovation trickles down in a slow-moving cascade by Bradley 2002, page 258. Here's the figure 5.2, which is the strategic sequencing of market entry. In letter A, we have the waterfall model. We have in letter B, we have the sprinkles model, and letter C is about selective model. In letter A, we have the waterfall model. We have the domestic market, which is Central European countries. We have country 1, European periphery, country 2, European countries with different market conditions, country 3, overseas, and then country 4. In letter B, in sprinkle model, we have country 1 in Europe, going to domestic market 2, country 2, North America, and then country 3 in Japan. In letter C, we have the selective model. We have a domestic market down to country 1, and then next down to country 2, 3, and country 4 for about 1 to 2 years. Omei of 1995 recommend an alternative approach. He argues that the sprinkle rediffusion strategy means simultaneously entering all relevant markets in the triad countries, which is Europe, North America, and Japan. The reasons for this internationalization step relate to competitive strategy, such as reaching a critical mass as fast as possible for products with a short lifetime. The third approach entails selective actions, which can often be observed in reality or selective model. The selective model or ad hoc internationalizations represent a combined procedure. Within the context of this strategy type, a company resources are concentrated on the development of an adaptation to individual foreign markets. Conversely, other markets are developed simultaneously or successively, depending on the situation, and are treated less intensively. The companies concentrate their resources on selected markets which they work intensively, which is Santis, Swobody, Scrum, Glen 2006. Entry and operating strategy. The choice of market entry mode or operating strategy depends on the basic strategic option, the market position of the firm, market conditions in foreign countries, as well as on the amount of resources the retail company can allocate to expansion in foreign markets. In particular, the selected entry method indicates the level of control that the retailer seeks to exert over their foreign operations, the degree of flexibility required in order to effectively respond to a market condition that their foreign enterprise may face, based on Moore and Fernie 2005. Export. 5 modes of market entry or modes of operation can be identified within the international retailing literature. See Figure 5.3. The lowest level of involvement or commitment and risk is associated with export. This alternative requires fewer resources that is generally associated with a low degree of control. In retailing, exporting is very rare, where retailers have a distinct product profile, such as own brand, which is attractive to consumer in other markets. It is possible for retailers to begin to internationalize through the export of their merchandise. Marks and Spencer's, with its St. Michael owned brand level, exported merchandise before it began to establish its international chains of stores. Alexander 1997. Export by traditional mail order companies or internet retailers such as Amazon are more important. Licensing. The next level of involvement for a retailer is through a licensing arrangement. Such contracts allows a foreign company to use the licensing company name or concept. Stern Quiz 1998. For example, Migros, the largest Swiss food retailer, licensed its name in Turkey. Another example is Garant Meuvel, a German cooperation of furniture retailers which licensed its marketing concept formats. and named to roughly 20 countries in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Like exporting, licensing arrangements are relatively rare in international expansion choices for retailers. Franchising. Franchising is a market entry mode which has led to the rapid expansion of a large number of well-known global retailers. Through the franchising arrangement, the franchisor gives other companies the right to use the franchisors. Retailers name and concept format retail marketing. In turn, the franchisor support the franchisees in running their business under marketing, training, controlling, and logistics. Joint ventures. A joint venture is the next level of international involvement for a retailer. This entry and operation strategy has become an important aspect of international activity. In most cases, joint ventures involve a local and foreign or incoming company. However, there is no reason why two or more retailers should not establish a joint company in order to enter a new market. Joint ventures provide the incoming retailer with an opportunity to learn about operation in a new market, while at the same time giving indigenous retailers the opportunity to learn from the international players. It is based on Alexander 1997. The French company Carrefour number 2 worldwide. See table 5.1 often enters foreign markets with this mode. This is the example of entry and operation modes in foreign markets. You will see the risk or high, low, and the exporting, license, franchising, joint ventures, acquisitions or wholly owned subsidiaries, and then resources required. It is sourced by adapted from Bradley 2002. A good example is the relationship between Curve 4 and the Arabian Mahid Al Futtaim Group, which operates more than 25 hypermarkets in Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egyptians, Oman, and Qatar.
And last, acquisitions and mergers are often the only way to internationalize. Without a suitable concept to internationalize, many retailers are forced to consider acquisitions rather than the internationalization of their domestic format. The replication of domestic operations abroad through new store development is a growth strategy based on experience in the domestic market. This strategy means internal expansion or organic growth. Acquiring a foreign retail operation can also be the starting point for transforming existing stores into the domestic market concept or into the global concept. This is the case when legal constraints in foreign countries are barriers to developing new stores. For example, in large-scale retailing like superstores or hypermarkets, acquisitions can also be appropriate entry and operation mode for implementing a specific country market approach or multinational orientation. And the next reporter will continue this topic. And this is my presentation. And thank you for listening.
International retail marketing. Retailers that internationalize their operation must define their marketing mix in domestic and foreign markets with regard to the four basic types of international retailing, as illustrated in Figure 5.1. So, the term marketing mix is a foundation model for businesses historically centered around product, price, place, and promotion. The marketing mix has been defined as the set of marketing tools that firm uses to pursue its marketing objectives in the target market. So, four basic types of international retailing, as illustrated in Figure 5.1. Based on the Figure 5.1 that discussed earlier, it refers to the four basic types of international retailing. It includes global orientation, local orientation, domestic market orientation, and multinational orientation. Basically, to be oriented and having ethical as a retailer. Figure 5.4. Standardization versus adaptation of retail formats and assortment. First, what is a standardization? It is the process of making something conform to a standard. Also helps in ensuring the safety, interoperability, and compatibility of goods produced. While retail formats influences the consumers in store and addresses the consumer's expectation. In this figure, displays the retail marketing concepts in terms of the main elements of formats and assortment in the cases of domestic market, global, multinational, and local orientation. The domestic market and global approaches are characterized by both standardized formats and assortments. The standardized formats includes the locations of the store and the mode of in-store marketing. The standardization of assortment refers to merchandising and the principle of category management. In general, in this case, the price of positioning of the format is the same in each country. There may still be differences in the disposable income of consumers. With local orientation, the assortment and price or promotion activities are adapted to local contributions. Example, in food retailing, to the local or regional taste. Multinational operations means different formats. Like example, positioning, retail brands with different assortments and different price or promotion policies in different countries. Concluding remarks and future challenges. The successful operations of retail companies in non-domestic markets revolve around the main principle. Only companies which have proven themselves in a highly competitive domestic market have a chance of earning money abroad. An attempt to escape into foreign markets because of weakness in domestic market will fail. Being competitive leads them into become success and gaining more profit. One of the greatest challenges facing cross-border retailers is presently the market appraisal of new emerging markets in Eastern Europe, especially in countries which are not members of the European Union, and in Asia, such as China and India. The right strategic choice in terms of timing and the appropriate mode of entry in these markets constitutes a substantial challenge.
And this is my presentation, and thank you for listening.